Welcome back, Guardian, and thanks for tuning in to episode number 3. In this episode, we're going to be talking about explosive rounds, resist mods, and how to balance them in the game, some patrol tips, and also potentially the new Trackless Waste God Roll replacement. So thanks for tuning in, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Shout out to B Squad for keeping this channel alive and pulsing. Now let's get busy. Let's start it off with melee resistance, because it's not exactly what it says it is. It's called melee damage resistance, so it has you thinking that it has to be all types of melees, boss stomps, things like that. But then the word point blank rage from combatants has me thinking it could be anything. So I tried 12 to 13 meters just to start there. I noticed I didn't get any results, so I got a little bit closer, between 5 to 6 meters, still no results. So then I got within point blank or melee range, and then took a sniper shot to see if sniper damage mattered. And that's when I noticed that I'm actually getting a little bit more resistance than when I took the sniper at 12 to 13 meters. So the wording melee damage resistance is actually kind of incorrect because it can be any type of damage, whether it's a sniper or a melee or anything. So I got within around 4 meters, took a melee and took a snipe. Then I noticed my shield didn't break, which it was before. So then I took the resist off and did that same exact test, and noticed the damage difference was actually there, and it actually doesn't have to be a melee. So once I learned that data, I wanted to find out exactly how close I had to be, how many meters, to make it start proccing. So I busted out Darcy and had one hell of a time trying to aim down sight and get within distance to take damage. So here's one of those tests right here. This is when I realized it took 4 meters before it actually started to work. It was a little bit confusing to read as I'm trying to walk forward and take a sniper damage without him meleeing. So I tried this a bunch of times. Every time I would get within 5 meters, I noticed that it wasn't proccing. Every time I got within 4 meters or less, that's when it did start proccing. So for melee damage resistance, you have to be within 4 meters, but it 100% doesn't matter what type of damage it is. I can't say the exact percentage you're getting for damage resistance, but if I had to guess at it, I would say adding 1 applies about a 15, maybe even up to 18% resistance. And then by applying 2, of course there's going to be diminishing returns, and I think they're all the same diminishing, and I'll go into that a little bit later. But I'm pretty sure it's 25% damage resistance when you apply 2 resist mods on. In this image, I have 0 resist and 1 resist stacked on top of each other, so the red health is 0, and then the white stage is 1. Looks like around 15 to maybe 18%. In this image, top row is 2 resist, bottom row is 0. If you break up the health meter into 4 slots of 25%, it looks like you're getting a 0.25% back by applying 2 resist mods. Here's the damage difference just from a single melee, using 0, then onto 1 resist, and then 2 melee resist. The enemies were 18 light higher in this test, but keep in mind that every piece of light matters on every piece of gear that you have on, and that's what makes talking resist a little bit hard to do to tell you how many you would need. But you'll see as the video plays out, as we go into sniper resist next, that there's a pretty beneficial trade-off by using them. But keep in mind, your light level is definitely going to play a difference in this, but during sniper damage resistance, you'll notice that it's also worded kind of funny. It says sniper damage resistance, but then it just says enemies at long range, which I guess could be considered sniper, but I'm 20 light under in these tests, and here's without any resistance on, and then again I pulled out Darcy to find out how far away I had to be before sniper damage resistance kicked in. I have 2 on in this first test. You'll see when I'm at 30 meters, I actually do get resistance, but watch as I get my health back. I'm going to walk 1 meter forward at 29 meters, take that same sniper, and that's when I knew that 30 meters was the minimum distance you had to be at for sniper damage resistance to kick in. Now let's take a look at the damage resistance comparison, 1 versus 2 at 30 meters to see if it's the same resistance value from 1 to 2 melee resistance. And you'll see that the gap is around the same as it was with melee resistance, so they're giving you around the same percentage no matter what type of resistance mod you're using, but obviously the difference is the meters you gotta be within to make them proc. I'm sure the actual percentage value will eventually come out, but here's 0 resist versus 1 resist at 30 meters, and then versus 2 resist at 30 meters as we walk up and then down the scale, so you can see how they differentiate. Now let's move on to resist mods that used to be less sought after because they used to only offer 5% resistance, and that was elemental resist. So here's 1 sniper damage resist. You can see where the meter's at. Now let's put on 1 solar damage resistance. But like I said, I used to never use these. They were the trashiest resist mods you could use in game, but it seems like Bungie's made things a little more simplified now because they actually do the exact same resistance as all the other resistance do. There's 1 solar damage resistance versus the sniper damage resistance, and there's no difference at all. So if you wanted to build out solar damage resistance in like a specific ordeal or a raid because you knew that this type of enemy is going to be seen most often, you might can just apply elemental resist and get way more benefit than the other resists will offer you. Now moving on to these big brigs. Here it is with 0 resist, 6 shots, 4 to break shield, and now I want to try out Concussive Dampener, which used to be OP in previous seasons because of the amount of resist they offered, but it only works on area of effect damage, which is exactly what Brigs do, the splash type of damage. 1 Concussive Dampener equals 8 shots, and then 5 to break shield instead of 4. I ran this test multiple times to make sure the splash damage was equal each time, to make sure that it wasn't some fluke that I was getting this many shots this amount of times or whatever, you know, so I wanted to make sure it was all correct. Now I put on 1 sniper damage resistance, stood 30 meters away, and then voila. Looks like they all do the same amount of resistance, no matter what kind of resist you use. So then I put void on to further conclude this test. So void resistance versus void damage, obviously same thing, and exact same damage, the exact percent of health taken down per shot. So it looks like it doesn't matter what you got on, it's going to be the same. You can do void resist, concussive dampener, elemental resist, melee damage resist, but you'd have to be within 4 meters. The sniper damage resist at 30 meters, like I said, it doesn't matter what you have on, they all do the exact same nowadays, which makes it a whole lot better balance in the game, because now you can really tune in what you're actually doing. If you're doing an ordeal that has a lot of solar snipers, you might want to do straight up solar resist, or maybe 1 sniper resist and 1 solar resist if there's other type of enemies that aren't snipers, where you know you're not always going to be 30 meters away. Or an example could be this ordeal here. You see that I get meleeed twice up to 3 times. The point is you get way more resistance nowadays, and it's easier to balance, and the trade-off makes way more sense than it used to. Last season you had to waste all your mod slots just to get resistance in Grandmaster. Now you just need to waste 2 slots, and the trade-off is, do I want reserves, or do I want a good group of damage resistance that's actually going to matter in the game, that I can actually tune and dial in specifically to the activity that I'm doing. Now let's move on to some different topic, talking about 1 for all damage perk. It seems like a lot of people think 1 for all will apply to all your weapons once it's applied on a fusion such as Coriolis. So pay attention to the crit shot numbers here, 3741 for the crit. Now what I'm going to do is put on Coriolis and get the 1 for all perk active, and then I'm going to switch back to my hand cannon just to kind of myth bust this. It doesn't apply all to your other weapons or anything. I'm still doing the same damage with the hand cannon, even though I do have 1 for all proccing. It just shows on your left hand side of the screen that it's still active, which means you can go to and from your primary, your heavy, back to Coriolis to still get benefits from that perk before the timer runs out. Now on to Patrol. If you didn't know about this, whenever you're getting to the Eclipse Zone of the week, you can actually get loot drops by blowing up these small drones that are flying around. So what you do is you find the enemy that has that little icon above their head and kill them, and then you'll see a patrol icon pop up. It looks like a star. You'll see it right here. Once you click on that, it's going to take you to the lost sector of the Eclipse Zone for that week. So for last week it was Rias Reborn lost sector. So I'll follow the icon, it takes you to a ton of ads. They have stars above their head, and you continuously wipe them out until a boss appears. Once you kill the boss, you're going to see all these little drones flying around, just as you see right here. Now you're going to find 3 different sets of these drones, and you're going to kill all the drones. They'll be glowing in order of how you need to kill them, and after each set of these drones, you're going to go click on a node, and it's going to give you a crappy loot drop until you find and kill the 3rd and final group of these drones. Once you do that, the 3rd and final node is going to appear itself to you. You click on it, and it's actually going to give you one of Varix's weapons that you can farm by simply doing this patrol lost sector. It's way faster than doing Varix's quest, and you can farm these weapons and get some of the good rolls with them. One of those weapons being the SubZeroSalvo rocket launcher, if you can get it with chain reaction, which makes the blast radius on this weapon extreme for a tracking rocket launcher, which is more than a max blast rocket launcher, but it only tops out in base game. In game or high tier activities, it's not that great, but you want to get alloy casing, quick launch, and a better perk besides moving target, but definitely the chain reaction perk. If you think impact casing is a good perk, think again, because it only adds a 2% damage increase on the initial blast and nothing else, just the impact of the rocket blowing up. It's a really weak perk. I made a video on it a while back and it hasn't changed since then. It definitely needs a buff, but you're always going to get benefits off alloy casing, which is going to double the natural reload speed on a rocket, which is the same reason I always go fill prep on rockets if you've ever seen the fill prep on the move mechanic. I displayed this in episode 1 if you want to check that out. But as I was saying, chain reaction on a tracking rocket launcher makes this a really insane rocket and a really fun rocket in base to mid tier activities. I imagine if you were doing a master ordeal and you're at the light level or higher on the master ordeal, you'd still get a lot of benefit out of it, but in grandmaster sense, I shot some ads at negative 25 light using it, and it only killed the ad it tracked and only just shocked the ones around it, which doesn't necessarily make it useless in high tier activities. It's more or less there just for damage assistance. And if you haven't paid attention to 180 hand cannons yet, if you still have any service revolvers lying around, they actually buffed the magazine size to 11, 15 with the backup mag, and then 19 with the extended mag. Here's some perks that I recommend, because these are actually a viable option now because of the magazine size increase, which they used to hold around 8, I believe, which for this damage type made them a really weak choice if you didn't have drop mag to keep dumping out ammo. The reload to magazine size just didn't make a lot of sense to make them a usable option in the past, even though they could create cells. If you have one with delayed explosives, I'm going to explain how that all changed. It still does more damage than non-explosives, but the percentage have changed slightly. For regular explosives, red bars 15%, orange bar 15%, and yellow bars 15% for the body, and then red bar crit 9.5, orange bar 10.5, yellow bar 10.1, and then add 1% to delayed explosives or explosive heads on a bow. And lastly, don't forget pulse monitor. Anytime your shield's busted, whether the weapon is equipped or not, will still reload a stowed hand cannon. And then of course, Vorpal is always going to be a viable option. Now moving on to the future Trackless Waste, even though Trackless Waste lives no more, unfortunately. But there is one role of an SMG that kind of makes it a viable option because of the amount of damage you can do, and that is escape velocity with these exact perks. It's the only version of escape velocity that I've ever liked, and though you probably have a couple that you do like, especially if you're on PC without having to deal with the recoil, but on console, this is the only one that gives me any kind of hints of Trackless Waste. But it needs Vorpal, it needs Model 8 red sight on it, it also needs threat detector and drop mag because the natural reload in this weapon is just garbage unless you get threat detector all the time, but it just makes it a lot more fun to use for running gun activities when you do have drop mag on it. It also needs a ranged masterwork to make it sticky just like Trackless Waste was, but it still doesn't shoot like Trackless Waste, and honestly I talked crap about this SMG for the longest time because I hated it. It just was really sporadic and kind of all over the place, but when you apply these perks to it and the damage buffs you can now apply to it, since you can put anti-barrier on an arm piece, really makes this a pretty beast option now because you can apply a major spec which will apply to all champions, and then on top of that you have Vorpal weapon, which is going to assist in taking off anti-barrier shields, and then you have the 20% damage buff from high energy fire, and when you add all that up, it's only supposed to come to 43% damage buff, but when I did the numbers without versus with, it actually added up to a 48 and 49% body and crit difference instead of 43%, so it's actually giving you more damage buff than it's supposed to, and it gives you the similarities and enjoyment that Trackless Waste True God Roll gave to many of us who are proud owners of that weapon that we will all dearly miss. Hopefully one day Bungie will hear our cries and bring that legend back to life. But Guardian, that is it for today's video. I wanted to add more on top of just the resist mod video, kind of break it up and talk about some more topics and some other data tips such as patrol, the explosive rounds, and things like that. I have a ton of ideas for videos, but there's no way that I could ever fit it all into a season. So I think I'm going to start branching out videos to cover more topics, kind of like just news, but for data in the game. But let me know what you think about that, Guardian. Leave a like below to help me out. You can also share this content with your friends. And for sure, if you want to support this channel and back the cause, you can contribute at paypal.me/Rustopholis, or you can click the join button and become a part of our Beast Squad to get your own personalized builds when you need them, and chat with me one-on-one directly in our Discord. And don't forget, you can also join hundreds of other Guardians, beasts just like yourself in our Discord. Visit the About section and scroll down and click on the link. Also check out teespring.com/inspace and all my other links in the description of the video to get a souvenir to look back on in the Slay days. But Guardian, again, my name is Rustopholis. I appreciate all your time, but until then, I'll see you all in the next video, next time.
In space.